Billionaire saves lost twins in a blizzard. What they revealed left him speechless when the reclusive billionaire spots two shivering children in the middle of a raging blizzard. He risks his life to save them. But once the twins open their eyes and whisper who they really are, his entire world, and everything he thought he knew, collapses. Before we go into details, click subscribe, like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comments section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. Sad face cinematic piano fades in. Soft wind howls in the background. The snow fell heavier than it had in 20 years. Thick, swirling flurries of white danced through the mountain air like tiny ghosts. Silent, relentless, and cold. High in the Colorado Rockies, a mansion stood carved into the mountainside. Its massive glass walls reflected the gray sky above, and its chimneys spat thin trails of smoke into the storm. Inside, the fire glowed, but the warmth never reached the man who sat before it. Ethan Cole, 43, billionaire industrialist, and one of America's most powerful men, stared into the flames like a man looking for something he had lost long ago, and he wore no expression. Just that stillness, that cold, heavy silence of a man who had run out of things to say to the world. The media called him the mountain ghost. He'd built an empire worth billions in renewable energy, but he'd walked away 5 years ago, sold everything, bought the mountain, built walls around himself, not of stone, but of grief. Behind him, the house hummed softly with modern life. Security systems, AI assistants, automated fireplaces. Yet there wasn't a single photo on the walls. Not one trace of the man he used to be. Only one frame sat on the mantel, the picture of a woman and a little boy. The woman's smile was warm, bright, full of life. The boy's laugh could almost be heard if you stared long enough. Ethan turned the frame face down. The storm outside howled louder as he stood, poured himself another glass of scotch, and walked to the window. Beyond the glass, nothing but white. The snowstorm blurred the world, swallowing trees, fences, even the long driveway that wound through the pines. He checked the monitors. The system showed -17 degrees Fahrenheit, visibility near zero. Roads closed. No one sane would be out there tonight. And yet, through the static of the camera feed, something flickered. A shadow. Movement. Ethan frowned. Zoomed in. The outer gate, 400 yards down the hill, had triggered a motion alert. "What the hell?" he muttered as he clicked through the feeds. There, barely visible through the snow, were two small figures, stumbling in the whiteout. Tiny, barely upright. Children. Ethan's heart froze. For a moment, he didn't believe it. Maybe it was debris, maybe an animal. But then one figure fell. The other tried to pull them up. Struggling, small arms shaking in the cold. He dropped the glass. It shattered across the stone floor. He ran. Outside, the wind hit him like knives. The snow was waist-deep in some places, the kind of storm that blinds you even with goggles. He pulled his parka hood tight, the beam from his flashlight cutting through the chaos. "Hello?" he shouted into the storm. Only the blizzard answered. He pushed forward, guided by the security drone feed on his phone. The coordinates blinked red, a quarter-mile away. His boots sank deep. Breath froze on his beard. His pulse hammered against his ribs. "Come on, come on." After 15 minutes, he saw them. Two small shapes collapsed near the guard post. He dropped to his knees. A boy and a girl. Maybe 7, maybe 8. Twins. Their faces pale, their lips blue. One's arm wrapped protectively around the other. The boy's jacket was torn. The girl's mittens were missing. Ethan pulled them close, wrapping his coat around both. Hey, stay with me, okay?" The boy stirred faintly. "Sis," he mumbled. "She's right here, buddy. She's okay. I've got you both." Ethan carried them through the storm, his legs burning, lungs on fire. He couldn't feel his fingers, but he kept moving. He had to. By the time he reached the house, his own vision blurred. He laid them by the fireplace, stripped off their soaked coats, and wrapped them in blankets. His AI assistant chimed softly. Emergency medical protocol activated. Heating increased. Oxygen flow adjusted. Ethan barked, "Call Dr. Harper. Tell her to get here now. Roads are closed, Mr. Cole. ETA 3 hours minimum." Damn it! He knelt by the children, checking their breathing. The boy's pulse was weak but steady. The girl shivered violently. He rushed to the kitchen, grabbed towels, warm water, sugar. When he returned, the boy's eyes fluttered open. Dark brown eyes. Frightened, but strong. "Hey, you're safe now," Ethan said softly. "You're inside. You're okay." The boy tried to sit up but winced. "My sister. She's right here." Ethan turned to the girl. Blonde curls stuck to her forehead, cheeks red from frostbite. Her breathing was shallow but stable. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. The boy hesitated, his voice trembling. "I'm Noah. And she's Lily." "Okay, Noah. You and Lily are safe here, all right? We'll get you both warm." The boy nodded weakly. Then his gaze shifted around the massive room. Marble floors, tall glass windows, the firelight flickering across expensive art and cold steel. He whispered, almost to himself, "It's like a castle." Ethan gave a small smile, the first in a long time. "Something like that. He made hot chocolate, real cocoa, milk, cinnamon, the way his son used to like it." He didn't realize his hands were shaking until the cup spilled. As he handed it to Noah, a memory hit him like thunder. His son, 5 years old, sitting by a fire, giggling, "Daddy, don't forget the cinnamon." Ethan blinked hard, forced the memory away. Hours passed. The blizzard raged outside. The twins slept by the fireplace, wrapped in thick blankets, the glow of the flames painting their faces in gold. Ethan sat nearby, still in shock that he couldn't stop looking at them. 2 tiny lives, dropped by fate at his doorstep. Who were they? Where had they come from? How had they survived this long in the storm? He checked the weather reports. No vehicles reported lost. No alerts from nearby towns. It didn't make sense. Then, around midnight, a sound. The girl stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open. She looked up at him, confused, scared, but somehow calm. "Are you an angel?" she whispered. Ethan's throat tightened. "No," he said softly. "Just someone who found you." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled weakly. "My mommy said angels help people who are lost." Ethan's heart cracked open just a little. He swallowed hard and said, "Then maybe she was right." That night, he barely slept as the storm screamed outside. Ethan sat by the window, watching the snow swallow the world. The twins slept peacefully behind him, huddled together like 2 fragile stars in the dark. For the first time in years, the silence of the mountain didn't feel empty. It felt alive and deep down. Though he didn't yet understand why, something in Ethan Cole began to change. Something that had been frozen for far too long was finally beginning to thaw. Soft piano fades out. Gentle guitar strings fade in. The storm's howl slowly quiets. Morning came with pale sunlight that spilled across the snow like liquid gold. The world outside was silent, blanketed in white, the kind of stillness that only follows the rage of a storm. Inside the mansion, the fire still crackled. The smell of cocoa and toasted bread lingered in the air. Ethan Cole moved quietly through the living room, careful not to wake the children curled up on the couch. They looked smaller in the daylight, fragile, peaceful, and impossibly innocent. He had draped his own blanket over them sometime during the night, and now as he stood watching, something inside him ached. A feeling he hadn't let himself feel in years. He whispered to himself, "How did you two end up out there?" The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Cole, Dr. Harper is at the gate." Finally, Dr. Elena Harper was one of the few people Ethan still spoke to. She'd been his family physician for years, back when there had been a family. She knew better than to ask too many questions. Ethan opened the door, letting in a blast of icy air. Elena stepped in, brushing snow off her coat, her breath visible in the chill. "Good Lord, Ethan. The roads were a nightmare," she said. "What's this about you finding kids in the snow?" "Over by the gate," he replied, leading her toward the fire. They were half frozen. I don't know where they came from. I called the sheriff, but the lines are still down. Elena knelt beside the children, her professional calm slipping slightly. They're lucky you found them. Hypothermia could have set in any minute. She checked their vitals, her hands gentle. They're stable now. A few frostbites, nothing permanent. But they're malnourished. Probably haven't eaten properly in days. Ethan frowned. Days? She nodded. Yes, their bodies show signs of exhaustion, dehydration. They've been through something. A few hours later, the twins were awake, sitting at the dining table, eating pancakes like they'd never seen food before. Noah, the boy, ate quickly, shyly glancing at Ethan between bites. Lily, the girl, ate slower, holding her fork awkwardly. She seemed fascinated by everything. The chandelier above, the paintings, the fireplace. Ethan sat across from them, watching. Finally, he broke the silence. So, where are you two from? Noah paused. We were in a car. With Mom. Ethan leaned forward gently. And your mom? Where is she now? The boy's fork froze midair. His lips trembled. I don't know. The car stopped. Then everything went white. I tried to wake her up, but... His voice cracked. He looked down. Lily reached over, squeezing her brother's hand. She told us to run, she said softly. She said, find the light. It'll keep you safe. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. The light? Lily nodded, her small blue eyes wide and sincere. We saw your house from far away. It was glowing. Ethan blinked. His mansion, the only light for miles in the storm. They must have walked through hell to reach it. He swallowed hard. You were very brave, he said softly. Lily smiled faintly. Mom said angels help people who are lost. Ethan forced a smile, though his throat tightened. That word again. Angel. As the day passed, he got them clean clothes, soft sweaters, tiny socks from an old guest room closet that hadn't been opened in years. When Lily came out wearing one of his late son's sweaters, Ethan froze. It was red, with a faded dinosaur patch on the chest. He remembered buying it at a roadside shop on the way to Aspen. His son had refused to take it off for days. Now it hung loosely on Lily, but she smiled proudly, twirling like a princess. Do I look okay? She asked, beaming. Ethan managed a nod, hiding the storm in his eyes. Yeah, you look perfect. That evening, the snow stopped. Sunlight poured through the windows, turning the frost on the glass into diamonds. Ethan and the twins sat by the fire again. The boy was sketching in a notebook he'd found on Ethan's desk, drawing mountains and little houses. Do you like to draw? Ethan asked. Noah shrugged shyly. A little. Dad taught me before he trailed off, eyes dropping to the paper. Ethan didn't push. He knew that silence, that ache of unfinished sentences. After a moment, he said quietly, You know, I used to draw too, back when I was your age. The boy looked up, surprised. Really? Yeah. My dad didn't think it was a real skill, but... Ethan smiled faintly. Sometimes art saves you when nothing else can. Noah grinned, that fleeting spark of a child's joy breaking through the pain. Mom said that too. Ethan felt something warm in his chest, a fragile thread of connection. Later that night, while the twins slept, Ethan sat by the fire again, the same place as always. But this time, he wasn't alone in the silence. He stared at their sleeping faces, at the way they leaned toward each other instinctively, even in sleep. He whispered, Where did you come from, little ones? He opened his laptop, checking missing person reports. The storm had knocked out communications for miles, but data was starting to update. Then, a headline caught his eye. Mother missing after car accident near Hollow Creek, 2 children unaccounted for. Authorities are still searching for twins Noah and Lily Matthews, ages 7, last seen traveling north toward the mountains before the blizzard hit. Ethan's pulse quickened. He read every line, his chest tightening. Their mother, Claire Matthews, 34, a freelance journalist from Denver. Vehicle overturned near Route 17. No contact since. He exhaled shakily, staring at the children sleeping before him, Claire Matthews, he murmured. Something about the name stirred him. Familiar, almost haunting that he tried to recall. Flipping through old memories, old business meetings, charity events. But nothing clicked. Still, the name felt like a shadow from another life. The next morning, Ethan got through to the sheriff's office. Yes, Mr. Cole, we received the alert about the Matthews case. The mother's still missing, the officer said. We've been searching the valley, but the snow wiped out our drones. You're saying the kids are with you? They're safe here, Ethan said. Warm and fed. Tell me as soon as you have news of their mother. The sheriff promised he would. But as Ethan hung up, a strange unease settled in his stomach. He turned toward the living room. The twins were laughing, playing with his dog, Cooper. Their laughter filled the house like sunlight. It had been 5 years since he'd heard a sound like that echo through these halls. That evening, Lily came up to him while he was reading near the fire. Mr. Ethan? He looked up. Yes, sweetheart. She climbed onto the couch beside him, clutching a worn photograph in her hands. Can I show you something? He nodded. She handed him the picture, creased, slightly torn, but clear enough. It was of their mother. Smiling, young, radiant, holding both twins on her lap in front of a Christmas tree. Ethan's hand trembled as he stared at it. The woman's face. Those eyes. That smile that it couldn't be. He leaned closer, breath catching. He knew that face. He hadn't seen her in nearly 15 years. But he knew her, Claire Matthews. Once Claire Hart. She had worked for him. Back when Ethan Cole had still been building his empire. The woman who had challenged his every decision, who'd called him cold-hearted in front of his boardroom. The journalist who'd interviewed him and changed everything about how he saw the world. And the woman he had loved, before fate had torn them apart. Ethan dropped the photo slightly, staring at the twins, his voice barely a whisper. Your mother, Claire? Lily nodded. Yeah. Do you know her? Ethan's throat tightened. His eyes glistened as he forced a shaky smile. Yeah, he whispered. Yeah, I knew her once. Soft piano rises, gentle snowfall outside the windows. The blizzard had passed. But the storm inside Ethan Cole's heart had just begun. Soft, haunting piano begins. The camera pans over the snow-covered mountains as dawn breaks. Me quietly. No storm, no wind. Just the muffled peace that follows nature's fury. The sunlight filtered through the frost-covered windows, bathing the living room in pale gold. The twins were eating breakfast, their laughter bouncing around the once silent mansion. Ethan watched them from the kitchen doorway, his coffee cooling in his hands. For the first time in years, his house didn't feel like a tomb. But now that warmth came with a shadow. A name that refused to leave his mind, Claire Matthews. The woman he had once loved. The woman whose face still haunted his dreams, and somehow, impossibly, the mother of the 2 children now sitting in his kitchen. He sat at his desk. The old photograph Lily had shown him lying flat before him. He traced his fingers along Claire's smile, the same one that had made him forget how to breathe 15 years ago. Back then, she wasn't Matthews. She was Claire Hart, a young investigative journalist who had written an exposé on his company's mining operations. Everyone else feared Ethan Cole. She hadn't. She'd walked into his office uninvited, recorder in hand, her voice steady, eyes defiant. He remembered her words as clearly as if she were still standing there. Money doesn't make you powerful, Mr. Cole. Compassion does. Maybe you should try it sometime. He'd laughed then. Insulted, intrigued, electrified. He hadn't known it at the time. But that conversation had changed his life. They had met again months later, by chance at a charity gala. And by the time the night ended, they weren't enemies anymore. They became something else. Something dangerous. Something real. The music softens. A nostalgic violin joins. Ethan leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes as memories unfolded like an old film reel. Claire. Laughing on the beach. Claire. Standing on her tiptoes to kiss him in the rain. Claire whispering. You can't buy your way out of loneliness, Ethan. You have to feel it to heal it. He had fallen in love with her. Completely. But then came the scandal. A whistleblower report about environmental violations. His company was accused of covering up toxic waste dumping, something Ethan hadn't known, but the public didn't care. The story exploded. Claire's name was attached to it. People said she'd leaked it, that she'd betrayed him. He never heard her side, never asked. Instead, he'd buried himself in work, in silence, in anger. By the time he realized what he'd lost, she was gone. He had married another woman, Emily, trying to fill the void, but love built on regret never lasts. When Emily and their little boy, Ryan, died in that car crash 5 years ago, Ethan had stopped living too, until now, until Noah and Lily walked into his life, carrying Claire's eyes, her laughter, her light. That afternoon, Dr. Harper returned, bringing more medical supplies and updates from town. "The roads are finally clear," she said, removing her gloves. Sheriff's team found the Matthews vehicle. Ethan's pulse spiked. And Claire. Elena's expression faltered. No body found, but there were footprints leading away from the crash, toward the North Ridge. Then they disappeared under the snowfall. "So she's alive?" Ethan asked. "We don't know," Dr. Harper said gently, "but she might have tried to find help. The storm would have made that nearly impossible." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then we keep looking." As night fell, the twins played quietly in the den. Noah was reading a book while Lily tried to braid his hair, giggling when he protested. Ethan stood by the window, phone in hand, staring at the search map the sheriff had sent. The coordinates circled where the vehicle was found. Just 5 miles from his estate. 5 miles. She had been that close. He turned when Lily's voice broke through his thoughts. "Mr. Ethan?" He looked down. "Yes, sweetheart." She held out a small locket, its gold chain tangled. "This was Mommy's. It fell out of my pocket when you found us." Ethan took it carefully. The locket was dented, scratched, but when he opened it, he froze. Inside was a tiny photo. Claire, smiling, holding a baby boy. The other side of the locket was empty. He ran his thumb across the metal. "She always wore this," he whispered. Lily tilted her head. "You really knew her, didn't you?" Ethan nodded slowly. "A long time ago, Mom said," Lily continued softly, "that there was a man who once made her believe in good people again. She never said his name, but she smiled when she talked about him." Ethan's chest tightened. He felt the burn behind his eyes, that deep ache of memory and loss. "She said he taught her how to see the world differently," Lily whispered, "and that maybe someday he'd find us if we were ever lost." Ethan couldn't speak. His vision blurred as the firelight shimmered through his tears. Later that night, when the twins were asleep, Ethan stepped out onto the balcony. The sky was clear now, stars scattered across the heavens like shattered glass. He dialed the sheriff. "Any updates?" he asked, his voice tight. "We're expanding the search north tomorrow, but it's rough terrain. If she survived, she'd need shelter." Ethan looked out over the endless snow. His jaw set. "Then I'll go," he said. "Mr. Cole, I can't authorize." "Don't worry about authorization," Ethan interrupted. "Just tell me where to start." The next morning, before dawn, Ethan geared up. Heavy boots, parka, gloves, survival pack. He left a note for Noah and Lily. "Stay inside with Cooper. I'll be back soon. Don't be afraid. You're safe here to—" Ethan, the snow crunched under his boots as he set out into the forest. Each step echoed in the silence. The cold bit at his face, but he didn't care. All he could see was her, Claire. Lost somewhere out there, maybe hurt, maybe worse. He followed the ridge line, checking his GPS every few minutes. Then, about 2 miles in, he found it. A trail of broken branches, a scrap of fabric caught on a tree. He picked it up. Blue, torn from a winter coat. His heart pounded. He kept moving. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, burning weakly through the haze. Then he saw it, half buried under snow at the base of a pine tree. A small campsite. A fire pit, frozen now. Empty cans. A wool blanket. Someone had been here. He dropped to his knees, brushing snow away, searching desperately for any clue. Then his hand hit something hard. A notebook. He flipped it open. Pages wet, smeared, but still legible. Inside, a woman's handwriting. If anyone finds this. My name is Claire Matthews. My car crashed near Hollow Creek. I had to send my children to find help. Please, if you find this, save them. Ethan's breath caught. His vision swam. The next page, I don't think I'll make it. The cold's getting worse. But I have to believe they'll be okay. If by some miracle Ethan ever sees this, tell him I never stopped believing in him. Ethan dropped the notebook, his knees sinking into the snow. The world around him blurred. He whispered her name into the wind, his voice breaking. Claire? Soft orchestral swell, emotional, slow. He sat there for what felt like hours, the note pressed to his chest. She'd been alive. She'd fought to keep their children alive. And she'd thought of him, after all those years. But where was she now? He rose, determination hardening his jaw. He wasn't going back without her. Back at the mansion. The twins waited by the window, faces pressed to the glass. Lily clutched the red sweater. He'll come back, right? She asked. Noah nodded, though his voice trembled. He will, he promised. Outside, the wind began to pick up again. Gentle at first, then stronger. Another storm was brewing. But somewhere deep in those mountains, Ethan Cole was walking through the snow, chasing ghosts, hope, and the memory of a love that refused to die. Music fades out. The sound of wind grows louder. The wind howls softly. Snow crunches beneath heavy footsteps. A single piano note repeats like a heartbeat. Ethan Cole moved through the frozen wilderness with numb hands and burning lungs. The snow had returned. Not as violent as before, but steady, relentless, the kind that seeps into your bones and whispers, turn back. But he didn't. He couldn't. He had Claire's notebook pressed against his chest inside his jacket, the only warmth that mattered. Her words echoed in his mind with every step. If by some miracle Ethan ever sees this, tell him I never stopped believing in him. He muttered to himself between breaths. Hold on, Claire. Just hold on. Hours passed. The sun dipped lower, painting the snow in fading shades of gold. The GPS on his wrist flickered, signal weak. He was deep in the valley now, where even the wind seemed to lose direction. He stopped for a moment near a frozen stream. Their faint footprints, smaller than his, not the twins'. A woman's. His chest tightened. He followed them. Up a rocky incline, through clusters of bare pines. And then, he saw it at a small, collapsed shelter made of branches and snow, barely enough to shield from the cold. He approached cautiously, his heart pounding. Claire! His voice cracked. Claire, it's Ethan. It's me. No answer. He knelt beside the shelter and pulled away the snow. Inside, there was movement, the faintest shift of fabric. Then a whisper. Ethan? He froze. His breath hitched. Claire! He reached in, gently, his gloves brushing against her cold hand. Her skin was pale, lips cracked, eyes fluttering open. At IT was her point. 15 years had passed. And yet, even beneath the exhaustion, the frost, the pain, it was still her. He pulled her into his arms, wrapping his coat around her trembling body. Hey, I've got you, he whispered, voice breaking. You're safe now. She blinked up at him, her eyes glassy with disbelief. Ethan, I thought I was dreaming. He shook his head, tears freezing on his lashes. You're not. I found Noah and Lily. They're safe. They're home. Her breath caught, a sob escaping her chest. The twins, they're alive? They're alive, he said firmly. They're waiting for you. Music swells softly, piano and cello blending in harmony. The storm returned as Ethan built a makeshift sled, bundling Claire in every layer he had. He pulled her through the snow, one slow, painful step at a time. She tried to speak, her voice weak but steady. You shouldn't have come. It's too dangerous. He smiled through the ache. I've spent years running from pain, Claire. This is the first thing that feels right. Her eyes filled with tears. You still talk like that, she whispered. Like you're trying to save the world. He chuckled softly. Not the world this time. Just you. By the time they reached the ridge, night was falling. The lights from the mansion flickered in the distance like stars through the storm. Claire's head rested against his chest. Her breathing slowed, shallow but rhythmic. "Stay with me," he urged, his voice trembling. "Don't fall asleep yet, okay? You'll see them soon." Her lips curved faintly. "You always did keep your promises." He felt the sting of memory. The last time he'd seen her, 15 years ago, walking away from him after the press scandal, her voice breaking as she said, "Someday you'll realize that love doesn't need to be earned, Ethan. It just needs to be given." He hadn't understood then, but now, pulling her through the storm to safety, he finally did. They reached the gate. Lights flared. The dogs barked inside the compound. The front door burst open. Noah and Lily stood there, eyes wide, tears streaming down their faces. "Mom!" Ethan barely managed to set the sled down before the twins ran to her, throwing themselves into her arms. Claire gasped, sobbing, holding them both as though she'd never let go. "My babies," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You found the light. You found him." Ethan knelt beside them, breathless, his heart aching with relief. The twins turned to him. "We told you, Mr. Ethan," Lily said softly, smiling through tears. "Mommy said angels help people who are lost." He looked at Claire, eyes glistening. "Seems like you were right about that." She smiled weakly. "You were never an angel, Ethan. But maybe you were meant to save us." Music softens. A warm, emotional melody. Dr. Harper arrived minutes later, rushing Claire inside. After medical checks and IVs, she confirmed what Ethan had already feared. Claire was severely hypothermic and dehydrated, but alive. Barely. She needs rest, warmth, and people she loves around her, the doctor said quietly. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "She'll have that." Later that night, when the house was finally quiet, Ethan sat by Claire's bedside. The twins slept on the couch nearby, holding hands. Claire's breathing was steady now, her cheeks touched with color again. Ethan reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You never stopped believing," he whispered. "Even when I did." Her eyes opened slightly. She smiled faintly. "I told myself, if I kept faith, maybe life would give me one more chance to fix things." He chuckled softly. "And it sent 2 tiny hurricanes to my doorstep." Her laughter was weak, but real. "You always had a way with words." Then her gaze softened. "Why did you come for me, Ethan? After everything that happened? After all those years?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because I lost everyone I ever loved," he said quietly. "Because I thought money could fix pain. Didn't. It just made it louder. But when I saw those kids, when I looked into their eyes," he swallowed hard. "I saw you, and I saw the man I used to be, before I forgot what love meant." Tears welled in her eyes. She reached out, her hand trembling, and placed it over his. "Then maybe," she whispered, "we were both meant to get lost, just so we could find our way back." Ethan's voice broke. "Claire," she smiled, closing her eyes. "Don't go anywhere. I want to wake up and see you here." "You will," he said softly. "I promise." Music swells to a gentle crescendo, warm, hopeful, nostalgic. He sat beside her through the night, the fire crackling softly. Outside, the storm finally ended for good. The sky cleared, revealing a canopy of stars, bright, endless, forgiving. And as the first light of dawn kissed the mountains, Ethan realized something. He hadn't saved Claire. She had saved him. Soft piano begins, warm, steady. The sound of birds faintly chirping outside. The storm has passed. The mountains were calm again. The snow lay smooth and untouched, glistening under the early morning light. Inside the mansion, the fire burned low, filling the room with gentle warmth. The silence was no longer hollow. It felt alive, peaceful. Ethan Cole stood by the window, holding a mug of coffee, watching the sun climb over the ridge. He hadn't slept. He didn't need to. Behind him, Claire stirred. She was stronger now, Her color had returned. Her voice had life again. The twins lay curled beside her, still asleep. For the first time in years, Ethan saw something he thought he'd lost forever: family. When Claire opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was Ethan, sitting by her bedside, smiling softly. "You stayed," she whispered. He chuckled. "You told me not to go anywhere." She laughed faintly, that same old laugh that used to light up entire rooms. "You always did listen eventually." "Eventually," he echoed. Camera pans around the room. Golden sunlight spilling across the blankets, children breathing peacefully. Dr. Harper entered quietly. "Vitals are improving." "She's lucky," she said, checking the monitors. "All of you are." Ethan nodded. "Luck? Or something bigger?" Elena smiled knowingly. "Sometimes the world has a strange way of bringing people back to where they belong." Later, after the doctor left, Claire asked to see the snow. Ethan helped her to the balcony, wrapping her in a thick blanket. They stood together, looking out over the valley. The same view he'd stared at in silence for 5 long years. Now it didn't look empty. It looked alive again. Claire's eyes shimmered as she whispered, "It's beautiful." Ethan nodded. "It's different now. Feels like the world's breathing again." She looked up at him, her expression soft. "You've changed, Ethan." He smiled sadly. "Losing everything has a way of doing that." She reached out, placing her hand over his heart. "You didn't lose everything. You just forgot what mattered." He covered her hand with his. "And you reminded me." Flashback montage begins. Soft music, muted colors. Scenes of Ethan's lonely nights by the fire. The children's laughter filling the halls. His desperate trek through the blizzard. And finally, Claire's smile when he found her. Voiceover, "Ethan, for years, I thought life was about building walls, protecting what I had left. But sometimes, it's the cracks in those walls that let the light back in." Over the next few days, the mansion transformed. Laughter echoed in the halls again. The twins ran through the snow with Cooper, building snowmen and shouting each other's names. Ethan joined them one afternoon, pretending to be a snow monster. The twins squealed, pelting him with snowballs until they collapsed laughing. Claire watched from the balcony, smiling, tears glimmering in her eyes. He looked up, grinning. "You could come help, you know?" She laughed. "You're doing just fine getting beaten up by children." For a moment, it was as if the world had turned back in time, to a place where grief couldn't reach them. That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Claire sat by the fire with Ethan. The twins had fallen asleep on the couch again, leaning against each other. The flames danced across their faces, soft and golden. Claire broke the silence. "They don't remember much about before. I tried to protect them from the worst of it. But they always asked about their father." Ethan hesitated. "Was he?" She nodded gently. "He died 3 years ago. Cancer. He was kind. A good man." Ethan's heart clenched, not out of jealousy, but sorrow for the years she'd carried all that pain alone. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Claire smiled faintly. "Don't be. He made me happy. But when he was gone, I wondered if I'd ever feel safe again." Her gaze met his. "Then that night, when I sent the kids out into the storm, I told them to follow the light. I didn't know what I meant, just that something inside me whispered it." She paused, tears welling. "And somehow, they found you." Ethan's breath caught. "It wasn't luck," she said softly. "It was grace." Music swells, soft strings and piano, emotional and pure. He reached for her hand again. "Claire, I don't know what I did to deserve another chance. But if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." She looked at him for a long time, searching, remembering. Finally, she smiled through her tears. "You don't have to earn love, Ethan. You just have to choose it." He nodded, tears spilling freely now. "I choose it," he whispered. "Every day. From now on." Weeks passed. The snow began to melt, revealing patches of earth and the first green buds of spring. The mansion that had once been silent now rang with laughter, music, and the small chaos of life returning. Ethan donated millions to rebuild local shelters and rescue teams, in the twins' names. He no longer hid from the world, he stood before the media once again. But this time, he didn't talk about profits or technology. He spoke about people, about compassion, about second chances. I used to think power came from what you could build, he said at a press conference. But the truth is, real power comes from what you can give. Claire and the twins watched from the crowd, smiling proudly. Final scene, slow, cinematic music building. That night, back at the mansion, Ethan sat by the fire again. But now, there were 4 mugs of cocoa on the table. Lily curled up beside him, half asleep. Noah leaned on his shoulder, murmuring, "You're like our guardian angel." Ethan chuckled softly. "I don't think angels drink this much coffee." Claire smiled from across the room. "Maybe not, but I think they show up when you need them most." He looked at her, his heart full. "And sometimes, they get a second chance to make things right." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Sometimes they do." Camera pans upward out the window to the night sky. The stars are bright, the mountains still, the world at peace. Voiceover, Ethan, "I thought I'd lost everything in the storm. But sometimes you have to lose yourself to find what truly matters. Love, family, forgiveness. The light we follow is the one we carry inside." Fade out, music rises, full orchestra. End credits roll. The end.